All right. Yeah, guys. Okay, so I mentioned in the previous video something that's interesting. I've had it here for a while. It's at the top. Leading is manipulation. What's his name? Jocko something. Uh, I love his approach to life. His approach is extreme ownership of everything that happens. It feels like the modern world these days, people are practically taking Stoicism and separating its pieces, separating it into pieces. Every one of them kind of like, every one of them kind of expressing or exploring itself on its own. Something funny about philosophies of life is regardless of which philosophy you stick to, if you do, you kind of succeed at something. You distinguish yourself, you differentiate yourself. And effectively, you build on top of one specific thing, and every day, eventually, it just expands. But the reason I mention him is because one time he was talking about leadership, and he mentioned that the difference between leadership and manipulation is intention. Does that mean manipulation is leadership, but bad leadership, or leadership is good manipulation? I know, I know. Any one of you would probably consider leadership as good manipulation. But ultimately, when you fail to lead somebody to do what you want, that's when manipulation comes about. Or is it the other way around? When you fail to manipulate somebody, you kind of like start becoming more of a leader and start becoming more of a, I don't know, I feel there's a certain way I could start referring to my experience with this. So I ran a restaurant and I wasn't the best of bosses, man. Anyone who tells you that from the beginning they were good at what they do, man, is straight up lying. I don't fucking care if you read a million books before you even start. It really doesn't matter. Because the nuances of every single thing you're attempting really need to experience. Because unless that flow, unless that engagement is a part of you, a part of how you interact with the world, your reaction time when you're not really doing something good would still be a gap. And so the more you interact, the more your mind and your body harmonize with the intention you have towards it. And most of the time you think you're doing well, you think you're well intending, you think you're actually like trying to push for something, point at a goal, any kind of stuff. But the truth is, we operate within our capacity. And our best is always whatever our limits are at the current moment. So that's something interesting. Our best is always whatever our current limits are at the moment. So when I was a boss, I had the restaurant. I had a couple of different companies as well that I tried to run, manage, rely on people. It's just a mess. It's like when you're really hungry to like chase after stuff, sometimes you're just like you don't burn yourself out, you burn everything in the process. But so I was trying to engage with my staff and I was trying to see how best we could create a certain flow, a certain motivational tactic, a certain whatever. I wanted to see what more could come out of it. And it's not work, it's what like the business itself, it's a restaurant, so it can't be scalable. So if we can like change the service, if we can just like maybe create different dishes to kind of engage with people to come, like all kinds of like different ways. So I remember at first I was being a lot more positive towards changes. But naturally, like anytime you're attempting to do something, you're looking at results and you're expecting something in return. And the more I engaged with the people, the more I realized that we're not really getting the results we wanted. And they're not to blame, naturally. It is I am the one who's and creating the project. I am the one who's initiating the move, the change. And for various reasons, a lot of the reasons were miscommunication from my side. I think they're understanding, but they're not really understanding. And other perspectives, I feel like I was a bit more opinionated than I should. I should have understood the difference between what I think would work and what they think would work. I was very, oh, that reminded me of something, and I thought, it's funny how people, like when I wasn't able to communicate with them back in the day, I was blaming them. I saw that when I went to Iraq because the people that weren't able to communicate with the guy that we were trying to work with, they blamed him for being stubborn. While I was trying to explain to them that we're just not really like telling him what we want. But anyways, there, I can't even begin to understand the frustration of somebody that's not actually being able to follow. Because that's what, if somebody is leading, somebody is following. And the thing leadership requires trust. But for me to follow properly, a leader basically kind of has to, I don't know if it's pave the road, I don't know if it's lead, push, point at the way, I don't know if it's like make sure the shoes are tied or make sure like we're not kind of like falling off cliffs. Leadership comes with a whole lot of responsibility. And effectively, each one of them kind of like anchors something differently in the people that are following. It has to be catered, it has to be unique, it has to be directed towards these individuals that are actually working. And it's funny because like ultimately, when the individuals are not able to catch up, the leader has to come up with something that makes them kind of like maybe motivate them, maybe pulls them, maybe pushes them, maybe just makes them kind of like cling harder or let go even at times. But that's practically what manipulators do, right? They manipulate the situation in order for you to get the job done. What's the difference when it comes to leadership? Well, I guess growth. Well, with manipulators as well, you gain growth. But I think the true difference is like there's manipulation with attachment and manipulation with detachment. And anytime you're discussing manipulation, there's always some form of pressure that's on you from the actual like situation, from the process. But anytime you're discussing like leadership, it feels like the actions itself themselves reveal the pressure, release the pressure of the situation and the tension. So in leadership, it always feels like there's a tension and then there's a release. But in manipulation, it always feels like there's just applied tension, which literally means a leader is basically a person that knows when to apply like certain manipulation skills and when to let loose the people that are kind of like trying to build something or do something. There are times when he needs to interfere, and there are times where he doesn't need to interfere. Now, in the Tao Te Ching, there's an actual, the Tao Te Ching, the book of the Tao, there's an actual state that is described about leadership. And it's funny because the way they discuss leadership is more that He who administers the kingdom, honoring it as he honors his own person, may be employed to govern it, and he who would administer it with the love which he bears to his own person may be entrusted with it. The entire actual conversation here discusses the fact that speech, that leadership, is when by the end of the day, the true person who has created all the movement and all the change is the person who hasn't gotten any consideration for it. Right? It really just discusses how the person who's truly leading doesn't really do anything when it comes to the project itself. All he does is make sure that the actual people are more and more and more interactive with what needs to get done. Here's another analect. Therefore, the sage puts his own person last, and yet it is found in the foremost place. He treats his person as if we were foreign to him, and yet that person is preserved. It is not because he has no personal and private ends that therefore such ends are realized. Ultimately, by the end of by the success, everyone will come, will unite, and be like, "We did this." And I think that's where leadership actually triumphs manipulation. But leadership in itself is basically applying manipulative techniques, knowing when to do that and how to do it. It's really about when to apply tension and when to like release and to have the people kind of like grow on their own and just be satisfied with what they're doing instead of the other way around. This could be a thing, man. Later.